thank you so much for coming on the My K-12 Career Show to share your story with our viewers and our listeners. Would you please tell us what's going on in your life and in your K-12 career right now?
All right. In my life, I feel like there's always something going on. Like immediately, I am literally renovating my master bathroom. Okay. So if anyone has ever had a renovation in their master bathroom, it's not going to go at your pace. And so that's in my immediate life, my immediate right now. Okay. But in my career, we are in our third week of school. And I always say third week because first week of pre-planning really sets the stage of how the school year gets going. But the first 10 days, like Friday, we kept saying it is 10 days, the 10th day of school, and dealing with starting off trying to feel as normal as possible after, I would say 3 years of a lot being up in the air. Now it's like 20% being up in the air. Sure. But as far as outlook comes, but dealing with a lot smaller school. So I've been at the same school as a principal throughout COVID. And so we're a lot smaller this year. But we are very strong in our efforts and our work that we're working on. And our staff is very motivated. So keeping that motivation, keeping the expectations high for our kids and making connections.
That's great. How many students do you have in your school?
So this right now, after the 10th day, that 10-day count is so important. We are about at 475. And
that's perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah, I guess. When you're list of 650 and, we're kind of slated for 650, 545. Now I have no excuse to know every child's name in my building.
100%. That's true. That's very true. So what made you get into K-12 education in the first place?
Interestingly enough, I had zero interest in being in K-12 education when I walked into the doors of Our Lady of the Elms College in Chicopee, Massachusetts. I was always considered like pre-med, even nursing, wasn't sure how deep I was going to go into medication, if I was going to go into medicine, if I was going to go pathology, but I knew I had taken through high school. It was always science classes, math, science opportunities in Massachusetts. We had lots of like clubs or science colleges that would support inside the high school. So I had lots, like I had dissected animals and things that now are, you see it all the time in high schools. Yeah. But I was a part of a lot of college campuses in the middle of high school. Sure. At the same time, I also did a lot of tutoring in the inner city, which in Massachusetts, I didn't live in the Boston area. So the inner city doesn't mean the same as the inner city in Atlanta or LA or Boston, but in the inner city schools where they were not the suburbs and they had a lot of urban needs that we see now. So I was always required to do some tutoring in high school. My parents always made sure I did tutoring. So that was a connection to education. And my mom was an educator and my grandmother was an educator. So education was around. It was an option. Was not on my list, and it wasn't on any of my sister's list, my siblings. Okay. So my first year of college, I go, college is fun, even at an all women's college campus. It's fun, right? You want to do things. And I saw the books and how much studying I had to do. And it was like when you went to the bookstore to pick up your books, I was like, oh, all of those books. And all of my other freshman friends didn't have, that I had just met 2 days ago, but they didn't have all those books. And then my big sister, we had a big sister program, and she was in education. And so I went and started that first semester with the regular, on track with what I was supposed to do. And the only math she had to take was statistics, elementary statistics. So I was like, maybe I want to do this. And that second semester I changed. I wanted to catch up in what I had lost that first semester. Yeah. And I ended up switching my whole trajectory, started talking about a master's degree and working on my bachelor's in elementary education. Okay. And then my bachelor's in elementary education, and then a master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages.
Wow. So how long have you been in K-12 education?
The whole time. Now, if I do the math, I say, okay, so 94, then we go to 96. So the entire, since I went into college to now. And then when I was an elementary school teacher, and then I was an ESOL teacher. Okay. Some places, ESL, worked in Vietnamese, but large Vietnamese populations in Atlanta, Spanish, but much more larger Asian populations. And then where else? And then I went to curriculum development. So I became a curriculum support specialist. And then from curriculum support specialist, started to work on my leadership. And then from leadership degrees, just had a lot of experiences, was an assistant principal for 2 years, and then have been a principal for 11, going on my 12th year.
Wow. Okay. So, wow. So you've been a principal for 12 years. Do you ever see yourself moving to the district level?
I am not. A conversation that we have a lot is, what is my next step? What's my next move? I work in turnaround leadership. So I went to UVA as part of my educational forum for turnaround leadership and transforming schools. So the schools that I choose to lead are definitely on some grade level that are on some list, depending on where the list is and what they call it that time of year or that decade. And then when I leave, they're in, performing at a proficient level of C or higher. That's like my little radar. So what is my next step? I know that my next step is, once I do make the decision to move on from College Park, I don't know right now, right? So at one point it was, I want to do this or that, but I have not settled on what I want to do. I love what I do, but I don't think I'm ready to go back into another leadership position where I would actually do that same level of work. And then I don't see myself being a principal where the work isn't needed, because I probably would ruin things that didn't need to be ruined, trying to change stuff. And so, and I actually was an assistant principal in an environment that instruction, we needed to do some things with instruction, but the needs of the children, the turnaround need was not there.
Sure.
So I'm not sure. I like consulting with not personal consulting, but consulting maybe with a firm that I've worked with. I've had a lot of partnerships. And so potentially really some of the things that I've bought into working with a couple of companies, but I have not hit that. This is what I'm working towards.
Sure.
And a lot of people have that conversation with me from the district office as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And they're like, what is your next move? I feel like going into a cubicle is, you're going into a cubicle to just like not be connected to the work at the same way that makes me get up in the morning and excited about it.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm going to end up needing a slower pace.
Oh, no doubt about that. So, I feel like our profession is the greatest profession in the world. I feel like it's the profession that makes all the other professions possible. But I also feel like we don't get the accolades or the credit that we deserve. Why do you feel like the K-12 profession is such an amazing profession? In the work that I do and the work that we do, we truly are changing communities. We're changing the outcomes for children, and we're engrossed in experiences. Like every day is an experience, and we can get better at that experience. We could be at our best and continue to ride that wave of experiences, but we have our own little communities that are impacting the world. When you think about people you've touched, or I think about people I've touched, and been able to be connected with something that changes the world, someone did that. Just like you said, it's not the other careers. So there is no change in the world without the everyday little changes we make. So it's just the impact. It's like you have to do the math. When you think about COVID and people getting sick, just with that, what was the biggest thing everyone wanted to talk about? Schools. Why? Because that's where the world is sitting. The world sits in our little playground that we called work, but the world sits with us. And so if you think for a minute that you don't have an impact, and you're not running a little world, of our future. And that's why we have to be safe. We have to be careful. We have to be responsible with that. But we can't negate the power of it. Even if we don't get the credit or the accolades, or the world doesn't realize it. They realize it. They just don't want us to realize it, because then we would get more notoriety. But everything has its place and its role, but we have to have that self-talk to know that it is powerful. Our jobs are powerful. That's true. So if you had to go all the way back to the beginning, would you still have chosen K-12 education?
I definitely would have. I believe that I think I would have done a lot more, and I still can't say that I haven't had time to do it, but with marketing, I think a lot of what you say about education is that we don't market ourselves well.
That's true.
When we think where we are now with education, and we think about in the world with social media, there's ways to show, like, you don't have to wait for a TV show to say what's going on, even in the positive light, but bringing things to reality, like social media, LinkedIn, Twitter,
Yeah.
and it brings the reality to a situation. There's so many things that have been learned just because of the opportunity, the exposure that happens now with social media or access. Whereas when with websites, people had to go there. Now things are getting pushed. We can push that narrative. So it's really understanding the marketing. And
Yeah.
when we talk about media, and like when I hear a story on the media, sometimes I'm just don't get riled up. And people who are not in education or people who are, they may say, "Why aren't you riled up?" I said, "Because trust me, that's what the media wanted to talk about today.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't have the full story. I don't know what happened. I've been on the news, not me, but there was a roach, and that we called it the famous roach from my school because someone said that the school wasn't being cleaned, and so there was a dead roach on the news in the corner. I mean, the cafeteria staff was livid. They said, "Make it seem like our whole cafeteria is nasty. We always get 100," and it had nothing to do with the cafeteria. So the impact of that news, it was about schools not being clean with COVID. It was a dusted roach that was in the corner, swept into the corner. And that's what was sent to them. They chose to run with the story. And so I've been there, right? And I'm like, yeah, you don't ever want to be in the news. I'm not making an excuse for being on the news. And there was a clear story there. But so when I hear the news, and this is before that experience to me was very silly. And I think the way it fell out in the public media as well as in the school was very silly and ended up being more towards us than more supportive of what was going on than anything. But there is really that action of the news and really listening to it. You're like, it's what the news wants to tell.
Yeah,
and if you don't have, I just can't jump and get behind it because I don't know everything. Right. And I've seen that story. It could be exactly like they're presenting it, and it could be 90% the opposite, and you don't trust it. And that's the same with social media. But the rate and the pace of social media, when you're pushing things out consistently to support your narrative, people have to work to undo the narrative, but it has a place. And in education, we don't control the narrative. And
that's true. That's fair.
I think marketing and social media, not just social media, but understanding marketing and just how things look. And I think I would add more. I would have, looked into more experiences to understand that and be able to have things like that in our job, because the district's not going to give it to you,
Yeah, that's fair. That's true. Wow. So you are a elementary principal, and obviously, these last 2 years have been outlier years with the pandemic and everything. What are you seeing in terms of the maturity and the growth of our students at that level, but also how they're doing academically? I mean, are our students still lagging behind academically? Because obviously I feel like elementary teachers and administrators should be paid the most because they set the foundation for everything. But obviously that doesn't happen in a lot of places, but it's super critical for students to be successful when they go to middle and high school. So what do you think?
So you mentioned two things. The first part is about how our students are faring, almost on like that social, emotional, or success skills, or being able to communicate, or just how they are as little people.
Sure.
And what I have noticed and how they are as little people, you see a lot of disconnection and how to make connections. When you think of students being able to, they really want to be around each other. So that narrative around children, they're all they want to do is text and say, no, they want to be around each other, but how are we around each other? You see a lot of needing of attention. So wherever they were needing attention from adults and needing attention from each other. And so some of the things that just naturally they learn in kindergarten, or they come to kindergarten in first grade and second grade, they're relearning, and it has to be taught in the environment. And so really walking educators through that. No, we have to teach it.
Yeah.
Because we have some second graders who did not have to line up and walk down the hall. And so teaching them how to walk down the hall is something that has to be taught. These expectations have to be taught. Teaching them how to communicate, giving them the attention they need in a way that is supportive, in a way that they can share their emotions. So that's where I think our kids are. But the beautiful part about it is that schools are about having those conversations. And leaders like myself have to make sure that doesn't get taken for granted, meaning they're giving us the opportunity. This is something we have to blow out the water. Meaning they're saying everyone has this success skills, we have the resources, and we're teaching them in the classroom, but we can't say that the first 20 minutes or 30 minutes of school is not happening, right? So we have to make sure that it's happening. We do things like circle up everyone circles up, everyone has to have a greeting in the morning so that everyone is looking at each other's face. And you would think something like that, kids sitting in a circle or standing in a circle and saying good morning and looking back at each other and saying each other's name, and teachers feeling, oh, this is a part of my day that's important. It's very interesting to watch. And I'm all of our non-classroom people are assigned to a classroom. So I have my little classroom, and then sometimes the teacher's like, I can tell you haven't been doing this, so I'm going to show you how to do it. So come on, we model it. And the kids are like, what? It's a 10th day of school and you don't know 3 of your friends' names in the classroom? That's not okay. Right. So we have to build that community. So that's like I said, the beauty of it is that the framework is in there, the supports for it to happen. It's just, as leaders, we have to make sure that it's actually happening and taking it real, as a real thing, as well as parents. Parents don't know how to engage. Parents who now they're kindergartner who is in a 2nd grade, that culture of how you engage in the school, and each school has a culture of how we engage. Got to teach that over, because now our doors are open. You can come on in, but here's how we can and how we can't, and how we can emotionally work together, and get our needs met. So that's really what the needs of children, and there's lots of specifics behind that, but definitely a need that's clear.
Sure.
Academics, the interesting thing about academics for me is that where kids and what they can do at certain grade levels is a construct, and it's something that's been decided. What we want to make sure is that kids can learn. Can kids learn? So if we say multiplication is important at 2nd grade, and we're teaching multiplication at 2nd grade, and now we have 2nd graders who can't multiply, what is the big deal, right? It's huge. 2nd graders, if that's what we say 2nd graders should do, they need to know how to multiply. But what we want to make sure is that our kids are in learning environments where their brain can be stimulated so that they can learn, and then we can fill those gaps. Okay. So I think it's imperative that we look at what we expect kids to know. And I'm not saying change where multiplication exists. What I'm saying is don't freak out that a 2nd grader can't multiply today. Freak out next year, but don't freak. Today, we have to freak out about the fact that we have to create a learning environment where we're specific about what they need to learn. We teach them what they need to learn. We fill the gap appropriately, and then we make them feel good about it. Because if we walk into the door where everybody's behind, COVID has done this and that, and learning is behind, we're falling into a chasm of a construct of negativity and no levels of success, right? And it's not, and what I'm speaking from is not from let's sugarcoat the situation, but if we spend so much time talking about children who are behind, what are they going to be? Behind.
Yeah.
That's other beautiful
mindset. You're right.
Yeah, it's a mindset. And it is so imperative that we stop talking about it from that lens at that level, because the gifts or the skills that exist to fill those gaps exist. So at my school where I was an assistant principal at one time, the gaps probably weren't as big because of the fact that the parents were filling those gaps. But then when you go into schools like I have been, where you have to transform education, how to fill those gaps exist. So now we're having similar conversations around how to fill those gaps. And now it's the same work. And where I say to a lot of my teachers, they're now understanding that it's not just them, because we're in a needs improvement school, or we're in a school that needs improvement. Now the district is talking about the same thing that we've been asking you to do. And guess what? We're 4 years in, and now you've perfected it, and they're just learning how to do it. We're still always going to feel it. Like if they have a cold, we have pneumonia, but the practices and how we fill those gaps exist. And the same mindset that exists about the kids are behind, the kids are behind, the kids are behind, we're dealing with the reality of what does behind mean. And then that other piece of this is a construct, because next year they can change. Now you don't need to know multiplication to 5th grade.
You're right. You're
right. You put where that is placed. Kids need to be thinkers. Kids need to be able to learn. They need to take information. They need to be engaged in their learning. They need to feel successful. We have to set metrics. So my conversation is definitely not about, oh, let's change what kids are required to do. But the big aha is about, let's create a learning environment. Let's create what they need to learn. And let's put it in perspective of how do we fill those gaps. So
love that. No, that's real. That's real. You're right. I think that's all you hear. And truthfully, a lot of districts are probably guilty of this, just talking from a deficit mindset, in terms of, we're behind, we got to get caught up, this, that, and the other. But I like what you said. It's not about that as much as it is, do our children have the capacity to learn? As long as they have the capacity to learn, they're going to be fine. So,
and that capacity, and it's not even like the word capacity, there's so many components. Like,
sure.
Are we creating an environment where they can learn?
That's
Are they aware that they can learn? Are we creating an environment where the resources are equitable, where what we're talking about is equitable? We create the environment and we allow them to thrive in that environment.
Sure.
We're going to be fine. Because how many people learn a skill over the summer? The kids learn how to, and I'm just going to use multiplication, and I'm not a lover of math. That's why I was going to science, but with multiplication, and you can learn that over a summer if you put enough attention. Now, I'm not talking about summer school. So I'm just saying it can happen. So you tell me I have 10 months with the child. So let's stop wasting time with it. This is so hard. I know you don't want to do this. And the same with teachers. If we have this environment that what you do is so hard, it is hard. It is not valuable. Guess what? Look how productive you are. Look at the outcomes. Having been at College Park in the middle of my school, in the middle of a pandemic, and looking at the first 10 days of school, where we had one of our partners come in and just do a baseline, 82% of our kids in our classes were engaged. Like when I first walked in the door of that building, the first day of school, kids were coloring in a coloring book, not a coloring book about landforms and water, not a reduce, reuse, recycle, nothing that had to do, it was a Hulk, like a Hulk, coloring the Hulk, purple and green on the first day of school. What are traditional things that happen on the first day of school? And we even changed some of those things about what we talk about, but traditionally saying old tradition, what did you do over the summer? We stopped asking kids that because I personally even heard something that maybe I shouldn't ask that question, what are your goals for this year? What's the one thing you'd like to tell me? Things like that. But and I took a picture of it. And because I've had different cell phones over the time, but if I ever write my book about transformation and what it looks like and how it can feel without feeling abused and getting the right people to do it, it would have that picture of the Hulk, like with his green shirt, because it's like, it's the first day of school. Like, where did we even get this? Like, who gave you crayons? Not that children shouldn't. No, I get what you're saying. But on the 10th day of school, now on Twitter, my CST curriculum specialist, she posted a picture of a first grader who was coloring in landforms. It was the water and then the earth, like they were, but it was a social studies. And the teacher actually brought phonics and letter sounds into it and phonemic awareness. And she was like, land, like it was this whole, it's like a brave new world. No. And so learning is happening. You have to be diligent and focused and make it happen and come in with that attitude that we can do it. And the job is not easy, but it's not abusive if we don't make it abusive. And one of the things I really talk about with my staff is like I talked to a couple of teachers, one grade level. I'm like, did you guys eat lunch today? And they're like, I'm like, you're not gonna last. So I'm gonna need you to take care of my teachers because Skittles and because I walked by and I knew it wasn't their planning time at one day. And I was like, this is lunchtime. And I love that you guys are in the room together, but you have a Sprite, you're on your cell phone, not eating anything. And you're not even drinking water. Like you can't do this work. You can't wake up and just do this job. So you have to take care of yourself. 100%. And the next day I did a check. What'd you eat today? Well, I had pizza. Okay, you get a grade. What'd you have? Skittles? No, ma'am. What did you have? Once again, I love that you all are together after school working, but you are not going to survive this work. Yeah. So not that it's not hard, but we got to take care of ourselves.
100%. You cannot teach on empty.
No, and I stay with my water. And maybe that's because I talk a lot, but I stay with my water.
No, that's cool. That's cool. Doc, I am so grateful for you coming on the show and just sharing all these golden nuggets. I am going to challenge you to definitely write that book. Not if you write your book, when you write your book. Definitely need to write that because truthfully, let's be honest, like there are a lot, what you just described is happening in a lot of schools across the country. And the sad thing about it is it's happening in a lot of inner city schools across the country. So who is it hurting? It's hurting the students that need the most support, and so definitely we need that. We need that for the culture. We definitely need that for our students because truthfully, if a child's in first, second, fifth grade, we only get one shot. And if we don't do what we need to do for those children when they're with us, then that's why by the time they get to 6th and 7th grade or high school, they're still reading on a third grade level, right? And so to me, we have to do a much better job, and we just have to be really, like you said, just really intentional about what we do. And this is not busy work. And, painting a green man with purple shorts is what, come on, that's crazy. So
Waste of everybody's time.
everybody's time, right? And it is such a disservice. I call it malpractice in the K-12 profession, right? Nobody would accept that if a doctor was doing that or if a lawyer was doing that, right? And so it's not okay.
And some of the things that I say to my staff, and I say, if we drew, our school district is huge, and I'm right by the airport.
North and south.
Yeah, and I'm in the lowest, I'm in the challenge of the district. Like we started with 24 schools on the needs improvement state list. And after coming out of COVID, they're not providing the list yet, but College Park may not be on the list, right? Where they do the cutoff measures, but we still have to, keep going so that we don't get back on it.
Sure.
However, the reality is that I always tell myself, I said, if you drove 3 miles up the road or 5 miles up to 15 miles, no one's accepting that. So why would we accept it here? At one point we had a vacancy.
That's so true.
We had a vacancy, and I've taught on both sides of the district. I've led on both sides of the district, and I love both. I love education, so
Absolutely.
I'm going to love both sides. I feel my worth more here. Sure. And my families would always say, we miss you, PTA, we miss you. But I tell my staff, I said, vacancies are true. I think in all careers, the research that I've read is about people aren't going to put up with certain things in careers. It's not they're sitting home getting wealthy off of certain subsidies. It's just that they're like, I need to work where I'm mentally supported or where I feel good in my work. And, we didn't have an art teacher. And so they were like, but it's only an art teacher. I said, and I'm not going to say my former school.
I know what you said.
If students at X, Y, and Z have an art teacher, then the students at my school here have an art teacher. They're like, you're right, Dr. You're right. And then if they say, I said, the custodians didn't clean the bathroom, If students at so-and-so don't have to deal with it, they do. Now, the funny part was at my old school, I still hang out with my team, and they were like, well, you can't say that anymore because our custodians ain't cleaning either. But I said, well, don't tell my staff that. Don't tell my team that. But you have to have this metric of expectation. And when we don't know what it looks like, I'm going to show you what it looks like. You can see Black and brown children being successful when we do these things, and we have the right people, we have the right expectations. And there's a role that I play. I know there's a role. I have to keep the reality of the expectation, but I have to do it with a level of pressure and support and celebration around the work that you do. And one of the things my team tells me, and people say, oh, it's always a party at College Park, but it's going to be with a stiff chaser. Like, we're keeping the expectations high for you and the kids and clear. Like, there's no muddy waters. And I try to keep it that way. And over the years, as you build in your leadership, or as I've learned in my leadership, I've learned, and I'm still learning. There's still things I could do better.
Sure.
And better conversations to have. But one thing from me is that whatever's coming out of my mouth is going to be as consistent as possible.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Otway, we have been talking a long time, and I know I could talk to you easily for another 30, 40 minutes because we both like to talk. I can see that. And that's a good thing, right?
But then that self-care comes in, that it's Saturday. And
I know, right?
And we have to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show and just sharing your golden nuggets, your K-12 journey with our viewers and our listeners. But before you leave,
could
you please give us some parting words of wisdom. Tell us how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Parting words of wisdom. Oh, that's a challenge. Well, one thing I know about education, we always have to stick to what we understand about why we got into the role of education. Sure. And when we find that we're no longer connected to the role of education the way we are and what we do on our daily, then go find it somewhere else. There's so many caveats of education. So don't give up on education. Give up on where you're working or what facet you're working in. But we need quality people that are passionate about it. And so take that same passion and reinvent it, redefine it, and find where it could be, because everyone deserves to be impacted by your passion.
For sure.
So that's the nugget I have for today. How I can be reached. I am on Twitter. I am Dr. Otway, just Dr. Otway. Mm-hmm. And then on Facebook is really like family-ish, but I don't go on it too much, but it's my first name, Maisha Otway.
Uh-huh.
And then on LinkedIn, I'm Dr. Maisha Otway.
Okay.
And my fun page, I do have fun things, Twitter, and that's like a self-care thing for me. Not Twitter, but Twitter is definitely a business page. But my Instagram and my TikTok are all like fun, family,
okay.
my kids and all that stuff.
Are you busting some moves on TikTok?
No, but I do a good mimic of people. So, and I've slowed down, but that was definitely a COVID. Let's do something fun that I have to think about. So it's Maisha MNO on TikTok, but on Twitter, on Instagram is easy. Principal Otway.
I love it.
So my stories and stuff on Principal Otway is just like, you'll see a lot of stuff about being a principal, and then you just see about me being a mom, a friend.
Just living life.
Like a concert goer. I love Puerto Rico, so you're gonna see things.
That's what's
all
up.
out here.
Awesome. Well, hey, look, make sure I get all of those things. We'll definitely put those in the show notes so people can reach out to you and connect with you. But again, like I said, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I can tell there's greatness within you, and you're going to continue to just make a profound impact with the K-12 community going forward. So thank you so much for your service. Thank you for all the school communities that you impacted. And I am so grateful that you accepted my invitation to come on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the platform.
All right, Dr. Otway, you take care. All the best.